with us. So our pros are here to advise you, hopefully, on how to get some support in paying for this next step. Then we will have our senior parent night at around 8 p.m. where our guidance staff will go over all of the college application, what to know steps in supporting your student who is likely applying to college. And if you are here thinking, well, maybe that's not my child, maybe I just want to know about other post-secondary options, we will touch on that a little bit, but tonight is really focused on supporting your students through that application process. But just know we will meet you and your student there in our individual conferences with students. We are talking about alternative options and setting goals for them or helping them or supporting them in their goals. So I just want to let you know tonight is really truly focused on that application process though. All right, without further ado, so we can hopefully get you into the hour, I'm going to introduce Tammy Hussey for you. She's our Higher Education Association representative, and she's going to talk you through all things you need to know financial aid.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'll just briefly explain my capacity on tonight. Sorry, I'm not used to using the microphone. But as you'll see, the presentation is put together by HESA. I am not currently an employee of HESA. I'm one of the associate directors in the financial aid office at Seton Hall University. HESA has many requests for these presentations, and because their staff just can't hold the capacity of these requests, they ask us to help in that way. So that is my capacity on tonight. As you see, HESA will show up in many of these slides. So we'll go ahead and get started. So HESA's mission, their sole mission is that under the guise of the New Jersey government, they are the higher education authority that does all things geared towards the student's next step after high school, including grants, loans, financial literacy, etc. So all things higher ed are handled by their department. They are also very active at the secondary school level as well. They have programming that exists for that level, for this level as well. Or primarily the budget that's handed down from the governor's office is theirs to manage. Beginning with the 24-25 school year, it became one of the state laws that all New Jersey high school seniors graduating have the requirement of completing a FAFSA. Not just, one more thing to do, another thing to add to the list, but with purpose. Money over time had been left on the table, untapped resources. Overall, if you do not complete the application, there's no way to understand your household and your students' eligibility for the aid that they can potentially receive. So in the quest to have more New Jersey residents, not just high school students, all residents pursuing higher ed, they are going in this direction of having more students fill out that application to make that determination. Of course, there is the option also to waive the obligation. We, of course, mentioned that last because hopefully everyone who can complete the FAFSA will do so. There's really no way to know that you're ineligible without completing the form. And, it's common, you may speak to a neighbor who just sent their son off to school, or the neighbor to the left who sent their daughter, and across the street, and they say, don't bother, you get nothing, this is a waste of time. But your situation, your household, your resources, your number that in the household that you support, the number of students you're sending to school, is unique to your application. And so it's really hard to say, you make $50,000 versus $150,000 and you get nothing and you get something. So you really do have to complete your own application and let the results do the talking for you. And we'll get into more detail about what that means. So just as a brief overview, in the aid office, such as where I am employed, one of our main and primary duties is to evaluate your student's ability, your family's ability to pay. And we primarily do that using the FAFSA application. Not just to determine federal and state aid, but also institutional aid. So if you are not eligible for any federal and state aid, we do use that index that comes off the application to determine any need-based aid that the school might be able to offer. And that would usually be out of the range of federal and state eligibility. So even if at the end of your application you're finding that you are not eligible, it tells you you may not be eligible for a Pell Grant and maybe likely not a state grant, the school still uses this resource to make that determination of your eligibility. So it's still worth it to complete that application. So we get into some of the nitty-gritty here. The sources of aid. First on the list, merit from your colleges and universities. So your students, they've worked hard all the way up until now. Senior year, because they're applying to colleges and universities, that piece of the transcript will be missing. So that first, second, third year is really what's sort of dictating the application and driving the decision made by the colleges and universities. However, I like to point out that you want to encourage your student to keep working hard. You want to, at the end, in May or so, when you make that decision to make that final decision, that May 1 decision, the school you choose will likely request your final transcript. You want to be able to potentially use that transcript as a little bit of leverage. So maybe freshman year you were acclimating to high school, but senior year you really nailed it, right? You took some APs, passed those courses, really honed in on the mission here. You want to be able to say, look, you offered me XYZ for merit, but my GPA is raised, I've earned some additional credits, et cetera, what might you be able to do for me to possibly increase my eligibility for more merit? You can get a no, you can get a yes, but of course you want to be able to have that leverage. So lots happens in senior year. I have a sophomore in college, can't even believe that, but senior year, yes, it's very busy. The prom, all kinds of things are happening, college visits, it's a very busy season, but your students should continue to work just as hard. Second and third on the list are your federal and state aid options, only determined by the FAFSA. Accuracy, I'll say that now, is largely important on your application. Once a decision is made about your federal and state eligibility, if you are selected or maybe not selected for what's called verification, we'll talk about it a little bit later, we want to make sure that if we request documentation to ensure that what you reported is accurate, that we are able to do that. When we have to make too many updates to the data you provided, which can sometimes drive down your eligibility, you've potentially made a decision based on what you were originally offered. It doesn't always help the scenario, right? So accuracy on your application is very important when we're talking bullets 2 and 3. It is driven based on the information you provide in your application. So if you're unsure, you get to the asset section and you say, you know what, should I be adding that, or am am I overstating, or is this something I should do? There's a lot of pieces in the application that offer help. A lot of circle with question mark options. Click, there's a whole big bubble opening telling you what to do, providing more information. So just make sure you provide as much accuracy as possible. Last bullet under sources is scholarships. Hoping you're exploring some of those options now. Free options. If you're trying to get a $500 award, hoping you're not paying someone $100 to fill out the application for you, it's not worth it, or to even enter the application. Free scholarship searching, lots of money out there to tap into. Redhead who plays the viola. There's someone who wants to give you money. Young man who's played golf for 3 years. There's someone else who wants to give you money. So it's out there. All these searches are there. Some require some essays, of course. Write a good 3 to 4 essays, tweak it, send them out there. That's the way to go. Also start looking into some of the affiliations. If you've been, say, with the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, your job offers some benefit to your student upon graduating. Look into all of these things, see what you need to do to cash out, some documentation you need to provide, or whatever, so you're not at the end trying to scramble and get to these items. Those are your sources, and now we move to the types of aid. Primarily are your grants and scholarships at the top. Free money doesn't have to be repaid. Grants, again, based on your eligibility, completing the FAFSA. Scholarships based on merit. So once you have those secured, that's when we say go into your other options, including loans. The hope is that if you're looking at a school, sticker price, $40,000, it's not your plan to take out a loan for $40,000 every year. We would hope that in combination of scholarships, merit, other types of aid, you would drive down when you eventually have to borrow. So this is why we list it last. We include student employment on the list, not because it's used to usually pay for school, but it does give the student some relief in the area of not needing to leave campus to work. They need extra funding, not texting mom and dad for $50, Zelmy, we all know that. They're getting some knowledge under their belt, experience with working with others if they don't currently have a job. They will need a job once they graduate, so being acclimated to responsibility to a boss, to their coworkers, to checking in on time, of course, just work ethic. It's a great idea to have your student work on campus. And then, of course, savings. You have any savings that you've been putting into for this time? 529 plans that maybe need to be cashed out. Look into what needs to happen to cash those out. Does your finance company holding the plan need documentation or whatever it is? Look into what it would need to cash out those things and be prepared. So those are those categories, and then we move into some of those influential factors. Of course, academics, we've talked about that. Athletic ability, of course, Mr. Golf or Mr. Football, Mrs. Softball, whatever it is, right? You're cashing in on those abilities. SATs and ACTs, lots of schools are test optional now, but even in being test optional, if you still take the test, do well, that might give you a little boost on the merit side. I like to point out here geographic diversity. Say you decide you're looking at schools out of state. Someplace in Wyoming, Wisconsin, Washington State, whatever. They don't usually get many New Jersey residents, let's just say. You can look to ask potentially for some more aid if they are looking to potentially geographically diversify that incoming class. Maybe they're a little heavy on in-state students and they want to diversify that incoming class a little more with some out-of-state students, maybe specifically from the West Coast, right? They want to be able to say, yes, we have an influx or a rise, an increase in students coming from the East Coast area. So you might be able to use that as some leverage, right? And then some of these other opportunities listed here. The net price calculator. By federal mandate, every college and university has to have this posted on their website. The net price calculator says, by estimate, that what is the bottom line going to cost us to attend this institution? A very important question. You can easily get caught up in the college visits. You step out of the car, your Uber pulls up, you see the green. It's a beautiful campus, the buildings are nostalgic. It's a different feeling, right? You pull up on a new campus, you haven't been before. You fall in love. Mom, Dad, I gotta be here. Well, what is it gonna cost for us to be here? A very important question. And you're not just considering what it's gonna cost you to be there for the 1 year. Most programs are at least 3 to 4, right? What is that bottom line going to be, and can we comfortably cover that? Again, not looking at borrowing $30,000 minimum a year, but comfortably cover. Whatever you decide to do as a family is up to you, right? But you do want to understand what you're getting into. The bills are due, we'll talk about that in August. And you want to have it all settled. You don't want to be August 29th still trying to fumble about how we're paying the bill, right? So this net price calculator ahead of time, before you make that trip, before you pull up in your Lyft, have your Lyft driver drop you off at the campus, make sure you're understanding what it costs for you to attend and if it's doable, right? Under the category of grants for the federal government, 3 primary awards. The Pell Grant, if you're eligible to receive the award, you will receive it. It travels. You receive this award wherever you go. You remain in New Jersey, or you go across the state, the country. It's an entitlement award. Filling out the FAFSA determines your eligibility. As a supplement to the Pell Grant, Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, this award has some limitations. So, one of the duties in the aid office, I think it was the second bullet, was to distribute resources equitably. We do that using this award as one example. Pell, you're eligible for $73.95. This is the max award, and it's tiered all the way down. But say you're eligible for the $73.95. You're going to receive $73.95 no matter where you go. As COG works, School A, School B receives a designated amount. School A, maybe $1 million, School B, $500,000. Once those awards are spent, even if you're eligible to receive it, you might receive that award on School A's award letter, but not School B. That doesn't mean, in the end, that you may not be eligible, but it does give you, again, some leverage to ask the question. I did receive SEOG over here, but not over here. Is it a possibility for me to receive it at your school? Teach, as it implies, is for students who are thinking of teaching upon graduating. Unlike the first 2 awards, the Teach grant comes with some conditions. It requires a contract. So to receive the Teach grant, you would contractually agree to teach in designated areas for a specific amount of time upon graduating, some other bulleted items. If you breach the contract, you take a visit, you go on an early excursion with your school over the summer to the Amazon, you fall in love with the trees and the nature, You say, I can't be confined to a classroom. I want to be out here. This is what I want to do. You've already taken your teach grant. You come back, you say, I no longer want that. Your grant can potentially then turn into an unsubsidized loan. It's not the end of the world, $3,772, still a small award, right? However, it is something to just understand. Every school doesn't offer the teach grant. Seton Hall, we don't offer it, but if it is out there as an offering at the school you're attending, just understand that it does come with some terms and conditions, unlike most grants. We'll go over this information. This presentation will be made available on one of the sites someplace eventually. So you don't have to take all the photos, whatever you want to photograph is fine, but it will be made available to you. So those are the federal options. Now we're moving on to the state of New Jersey, the HESA products, right? Top of their list, comparable to the Pell Grant, is the tuition aid grant, or TAG. So you do have to meet all of these bulleted criteria items, complete your FAFSA number 1, be a qualifying in a citizenship category that is qualifying, all of these items, and I'll focus on the last bullet here, meet deadlines. HESA is a stickler for deadlines. We spent a lot of time in the office today, unfortunately, going over with some students who had missed the deadline or who HESA declared missed their deadline. And what does that mean? They lost their full aid. What does that mean in New Jersey? At the top level, you could be missing out on $14,000 for the year, right? That hurts. It hurts, especially when you're at a school that is at a higher rate, a higher cost, right? So deadlines are critical. As I mentioned, HESA handles the budget for the state of New Jersey in terms of the TAG and other budgeted items that they handle. And so because they work tightly with the budget, it has to be tied to deadlines, right? So when you miss a deadline, of course they get to recoup some aid that they can then redistribute and remain in the budget. So you don't really want that to be you. Understand the deadline, understand the requirements, and this is just not for HESA. At the school level, all levels, understand the deadlines. You'll be inundated. One other suggestion I'll make quickly before I forget. This process, lots happening. Potentially create an email address exclusive to this process. You do not want your acceptance to your school, it comes in an envelope or whatever, but a lot of it is coming electronically now. You don't want to miss that, right? You don't want it to be in between Urban Outfitters and, Bed Bath & Beyond or whatever, now they're online again, and just miss that, right? So everything to do with this process, create an email address, and that's for the parent and the student. Because while the student basically receives all the information, the parent does have to have their own email address, and we'll talk about that when you're setting up your FAFSA account. Another program through the state of New Jersey, EOP, Educational Opportunity Program. You do have to qualify economically and educationally. You can find more information on HESA's site, jgrants.org. If you qualify to participate, you can receive an award between $200 and $3,050 annually if you're able to participate. Programs like this not only offer financial assistance, but they offer this community that seems obvious, but is really sometimes missing when the student moves on to higher ed. I always like to say, college is not the 13th grade. You are not just going to another building. It will be like this, we all know. We've been in this situation. You go sit down, the professor probably doesn't know your name. You do your work, you turn in your tests and your papers on Blackboard. They look at it, give you some feedback, and at the end you get your grade. They have maybe 5 of these classes, right? So you can go to school and sort of feel lost. A lot of these programs look to bring the student into community, offer mandatory tutoring, counseling when needed, etc., and that does help with that acclimation into this new level of learning. I'll skip that because I don't believe your town is listed. So on to New Jersey Stars. Under the New Jersey Stars program, this is the first time we're mentioning community college. If your student is potentially interested in starting a career at the community college level, upon notification from your school counseling staff to HESA, they could be notified of their eligibility to have their tuition and approved fees covered under the New Jersey Stars program. If you rank within the top 15% of your class at the end of your junior or senior year, your counseling staff is notifying HESA so that they're able to reach out to you and explain your eligibility to participate in this program. So here, under the New Jersey Stars program, you would maintain a minimum 3.0 GPA at the community college, obtain that associate's degree, and then move on to the New Jersey school of your choice upon transferring. At the Stars 2 level, you're no longer eligible for full tuition and fees at the four-year institution, but you can receive up to $2,500 in an award. At Seton Hall, when students at the Stars 2 level decide to join us, we just match that award so other schools could do something similar. But these are high-achieving students. They're selected to participate. This is the first time we're seeing that an income level is tied to eligibility. So your taxable income must be less than $250,000 in order to participate in the Stars 2 level. If your students are looking for a vocational option, HESA in particular focuses on women and minorities here. And again, we see an income tied to eligibility. In the third bullet here, we'll see that your adjusted gross income does need to be less than $60,000. But if you qualify for up to $2,000 attending any of New Jersey's 18 community colleges, this is a very short list down here of some of the programming, but the community colleges offer lots and lots and lots under the vocation category. And nowadays it is strongly encouraged because we're losing plumbers and electricians, etc., right? So we do need some students still interested in that vocation category, and there's that incentive for women and minorities. Okay, so several years ago, pre-pandemic, there was the incentive to, at the governor level, the higher ed, New Jersey higher ed level, to increase the number of New Jersey residents completing school. So they did some research and found that we had a lot of students in New Jersey, families, adults, whatever, started and never finished. So the goal was, and then survey further, what was the reason? And they found the number one reason to be cost, right? You just couldn't afford it. They were able to afford it originally, had to work. As your income increases, you become ineligible. Working, food, roof over your head is more important, right? So they wanted to build some options for students and adults in residents in New Jersey to be able to return. One of those options is this Community College Opportunity Grant. Again, at the community college level, you have the option of participating here if your adjusted gross income maxes out at $65,000 for the year. I'll give a tiny story, last one for the night. I know I have limited time here, but I have a coworker in the emergency room one night. He's fine, but he's working with two nurses, and small talk, he realizes that they went to Seton Hall, both graduated from Seton Hall, but one started their career at the community college, and the other all 4 years at Seton Hall. The long and short of the story is that they both finished, they both took their exam, practicing RNs in the same emergency room, likely making the same money. So how you start has nothing to do with how you finish, right? So if you feel that a different start works better for you, that's okay. I won't say another thing about it, but that is just something to consider, right? And there are programming and incentives to help, again, New Jersey residents figure out how to complete this. The Garden State Guarantee. Before this, the Community College Opportunity Grant, the first 2 years. The year 3 and 4, if you decide to stay in New Jersey at a New Jersey institution, you could potentially qualify, again, meeting that income criteria. And in the 3rd and 4th year, can potentially qualify for tuition, approved tuition fees to be covered at that 3rd and 4th year. So transferring in, you would basically have your 4 years covered if you qualify to participate in these programs. I do want to point out, because it's been mentioned prior, this satisfactory academic progress. In the aid office, we are required to monitor quantitatively and qualitatively and maximum credit-wise the student's achievement. So by example, if you're registering for 15 credits, we are hoping that you earn the 15 credits. If you register for 15 and you earn 6, and you do this sort of repetitively, we could potentially need to select that student for review and understand what's happening. The government requires us to step in and say, hello, let's make sure we are providing assistance where needed, and let the student understand that if this continues, if your GPA decreases, you get a 1.7 and a 1.5, you could potentially lose your aid eligibility. And that goes for federal and state aid, and of course, any institutional aid. So there is this monitoring process that we have. Your student gets to appeal, etc. Hopefully I'm not speaking to anyone that this will ever apply to, but just to be aware, we do monitor academic progress. The 3+1 degree completion program, like some of the other programs, this one is somewhat tied to eligibility as well. You do have to qualify for state and other aid. But with these programs, the community college and some 4-year institutions have agreements that say you start at the 2-year, obtain your associate's degree, pay those rates at the community college, you enter into the 3rd year at that 4-year institution, you continue to pay the community college rate. And then in your 4th year would be the first time you pay the rate of the 4-year institution. So just another way to help defray some of the costs and get you to that completion point. So now that we've talked about all those grants and other opportunities to free money, we move into now what, right? So all that aid is applied. Hypothetically, you're down to $5,000 still due. You can start with the first bullet, and most colleges and universities offer a monthly payment plan. If you owe the $5,000, you can sign up for a monthly payment plan, paying off the $5,000, $1,000 a month. If your monthly budget says, I can't do $1,000 a month, I've just taken on some new things and that's not comfortable, you set it up for what it is. So let's just say you could do $500. So you do a payment plan for $500 a month, you pay $500 over the 5 months, you're left with $2,500. That's when we say you can start looking into your loans. It's not always realistic that you'll only need to borrow $2,500, but you're getting where I'm coming from. Under the federal direct loan program, because your student completed a FAFSA, they qualify without needing to qualify in terms of credit score or any other eligibility. As a freshman, they can receive up to $5,500, sophomores $6,500, and juniors and seniors $7,500. The combination of eligibility can change. Freshmen receive up to $3,500 in a subsidized portion, potentially upon eligibility, upon qualifying. And then any additional would be the $2,000. The current interest rates are at 6.39%. And then when you borrow, off the top comes a 1.057% origination fee. Just so if you owe $5,500, just know that the government will send less the 1.057%. So just be aware of that. Okay, so alternative to the direct loans, the federal loans are alternative loans or private loans. So these loans are in your student's name. The New Jersey class loan is listed here because it is HESA's product. However, there are many options for private student loans. I like to mention one of the perks to look for. Students will need a cosigner. They don't have the credit worthiness, they don't have the history of working, etc. They'll need someone to cosign. Whoever it is, mom, dad, grandparents, cousin, whoever, you can look for the option within the program to have what's called a cosigner release option. So that says once the student goes into repayment, 24, 12, 24, 36 months after they are in repayment, you can approach the lender, whoever the cosigner is, and say, can I be released from this obligation? So that is a little more encouraging than, as you can see here, being tied to a 20-year loan, right? Maybe you don't want to do that. But HESA also likes to point out here that currently, even at the top length of payment, 20 years, their loan is currently at 8.75% versus the federal Parent Plus loan at 8.94%. As a parent, you can borrow on behalf of your student. Your student would not have the obligation, it would be yours. So yes, at 8.94%, you can borrow on behalf of your student. That can be either parent. We've been talking all night about the FAFSA. Free application for federal student aid. The first word is free. It's found at studentaid.gov. All things aid you'll find at studentaid.gov once you create that account. Free FAFSA, second one here, CSS profile, is not a free application. We'll go over the rates in 1 second. And then you have HESA.org. HESA does not require you to complete an additional application. They receive the data that you complete on the FAFSA. They receive all of that information. All of the states across the country receive that FAFSA data and determine your state aid eligibility. HESA asks that you complete an account with them so that they have a way to communicate with you, but there is no additional application. The CSS profile, as I just mentioned, is found on the College Board site. It becomes available every October 1st, just like the FAFSA. The FAFSA now has a mandate, a federal mandate to be available every October 1st. You pulled up a Google sheet a couple years ago. It was a fiasco. So glad we're over that, but yes, the FAFSA is not broken anymore. It became available actually a few days before October 1st. And every year you will have to complete the FAFSA. So as of October 1st of every year, and before the end of the year, I recommend that you have that FAFSA completed. Free again is the FAFSA. CSS profile, your first application is $25, any subsequent are $16. In New Jersey, if you're staying in New Jersey, as far as I understand, Stevens Institute is the only school in New Jersey that requests the CSS profile. It is more common when you're leaving the state. More information, again, this will be posted somewhere. So, The federal student aid ID. Every contributor is the new term. Anyone providing information on the student FAFSA is considered a contributor. Each contributor will need to establish a federal student aid ID. The ID is basically the login you create. You don't subsequently receive a tag in the mail with your photo. Your ID is your account login, right? So your student creates, as a contributor, their own FSA ID. And then when you're determining which parent should provide information on the form, you can follow this sort of rubric that we've outlined here. If you have two parents in the household who are married, who file a joint return, only one parent needs an FSA ID. That is because when the data is taken from the IRS, you file jointly, they only need a match of one social security number. If you have two parents living in a household who are unmarried or separated, living in the same household, both parents' information would still be required on the application. If you have a scenario where both parents are living in the household and you file married filing separately, both parents are required to establish an FSA ID. In a scenario of a divorce or separated situation, you are going to provide the information of the parent who provided the most support within the last 12 months. That is how you make that decision. Don't ask. We have a whole, all the questions. Well, it's 50-50 on the divorce decree. They do 50, I do, how do we decide? Well, maybe who takes someone to practice more and uses their gas, or, whoever buys the extra grocery and sends them home. You make that decision. But those are the rules. For undocumented contributors, I'll note here that an undocumented contributor can only be a parent. A student completing the FAFSA does have to have a social security number and meet certain citizenship criteria. If the student meets those criteria, but the parents do not have a social security number or the required citizenship status, they can also still create an FSA ID and, again, sign the application. There were some issues last year and 2 years ago with this, but we found success with undocumented parents creating their ID. This moves us on to the information provided on the FAFSA is for the prior year. So you're going to be providing your 2024 tax information. Your FAFSA is 26-27, so 2 years prior to that is your 2024 tax information. That can help or not either way. If in 2024 you were making less, you're providing that information, you could be more eligible than the current salary where you're making more. And it could also work in reverse. You could have been making more and currently you're making less. In that scenario, you would still complete the FAFSA as is, and you speak with your aid office on how to make any updates to reflect any current changes. I'd like to point out here, the last sentence, you must provide consent even if you didn't file a U.S. federal tax return or any return at all. If you file a foreign tax return and not a U.S. tax return, you should still complete the FAFSA. It does request any foreign earned income that's reported on the federal return. Did you need that prior? I'm sorry, I switched fast, okay. So, again, we talked about this. The federal option, again, you cannot complete a FAFSA as a student without a social security number. However, the state of New Jersey does offer an alternative application for students who don't have a social and are potentially eligible for state aid. It is the New Jersey Alternative Financial Aid application found on HESA's site, njgrants.org, or HESA.org as we noted. Some of the key components are listed here. I'll point out the last two bullets. The business or farm value, if you own your own business or farm, you're not required to report the business or farm value unless you employ more than 100 people. It goes kind of flip-flop, back and forth, depending on what FAFSA year you're in. So if you have a previous student who completed a FAFSA and you had to report the business value, we are back to not needing to report that value unless you employ 100 people. And then child support is listed in the child support received is listed in the asset section. It's placed there because they just didn't have a better place to put it, so it's easy to sort of pass over. If you have a value for that, just make sure you're reading carefully and providing that number. Just a view, once you create that account with HESA, if, again, as I mentioned, you are happy to be selected for federal or state verification, we ask for documentation. Hone in on those deadlines, make sure you provide everything timely. You miss a day, you miss it by a minute, really. HESA sometimes, they're just unforgiving. They basically declare you ineligible, and other things too, scholarship deadlines and so forth. But if you're selected for federal or state verification, it just says, we're collecting tax information, et cetera, to make sure that what was provided in the FAFSA is accurate. And then hopefully it is. We just move on. If we have to make updates, we do so and get any new information out to you. This is the Dreamer application that I spoke of, the New Jersey Alternative application. I'll point out here that you do have to at least have attended a New Jersey high school for a minimum of 3 years in order to complete the application. Just a view of the site, HESA site, once you create that portal. And that brings us to cost of attendance. The first two bulleted items here, tuition and fees and food and housing, are what will be billed. You will receive a bill for tuition and fees and food and housing. Be prepared for that. These other items you won't be billed for, but there is a cost attached to them, right? You need books, you need supplies. If you're commuting, you might need a bus pass or a train pass, things that you need, right? So we built that into what's called a cost of attendance at every institution. It's going to vary because the top two sort of dictate what that cost of attendance total will be. But every school will have what's called a cost of attendance. On the other side of things, the student aid index, the index that comes off of the FAFSA. Again, accuracy determines the accuracy of this index that we then use in combination with the cost of attendance to make some of this determination on your award notice. So, we have laid out here 3 instances: community college, state college, and private colleges or universities. What we see stays the same here is your index. You complete the FAFSA, again, it travels, so that way you go within the country. So, if you decide to start your career at community college, just by simple math, just because the SAI is more than what it costs to attend, we see that there is 0 unmet need. That just says simply, there's no need for the school or the governments to add there because it technically costs less than what your index states. Conversely, at the state and private levels, simple math again, come out with different unmet need bottom levels, right? Now, this doesn't mean at the state level that they'll say, okay, you have an unmet need of $20,000, let's find $20,000. What that means is if they have a $5,000 award, they now have room to offer that, where at the community college they didn't. And the same thing at the private college or university. They might have a $20,000 offer or combination of awards that equal 20. And they have more room to do that because there's a larger unmet need. Overall, the the point of this chart is, okay, say your bottom line, your comfort bottom line is at $8,000, but you really have your heart set on Rutgers, right? It might turn out that you can get that bottom line to equal the $8,000 by the time you're applying for scholarships, the school offers some more aid, you complete your FAFSA, you're eligible for a small portion of Pell and some TAG. All of those items together could get you to that level, right? But you have to sort of put in the work first, make those decisions based on all the information, and then you are able to make a sound decision. So, you have your cycle here. October, we said October 1st, the forms become available. It says March here, I say December. Every year you have to have your FAFSA in. So between October and December of every year, you're going to complete your FAFSA. For the freshman year, you'll start receiving award notices between February and March and May. Nowadays, they're getting out earlier. It's a competition to get it out the door, so sometimes even in January, you'll start receiving award notices. You use that information because by June and July, the bills are due, so that all that aid is going to help determine what that bill will be. And then in August, the bills are due. Right when you're on vacation, as soon as you land, that email comes out that you owe $17,000, so you should have a plan on your way back to satisfy that bill. But it does move very quickly, so you just want to be cognizant of these dates. As we mentioned here, completing those applications, getting everything in on time. The mandate for New Jersey is that all award notices going to students follow this rubric. The shopping sheet is what it's called. So you can compare line for line, apples to apples, no apples to oranges, apples to apples, what it's going to cost you to attend any school, public, private, whatever, in New Jersey. And that was the goal because what was happening, to become a little more favorable, some schools were sticking in, the option to borrow, which would bring the bottom line down, and you would miss it potentially. So to take any of that vagueness out, they made the mandate within New Jersey that we use this shopping sheet. Some other resources here. I'll point out residential advisor. We talked about the college, the cost of attendance, that second bullet, food and housing. It costs. Sometimes it costs more than it does to just go to class, right? So if becoming a residential advisor is a potential for you, usually you apply as a rising sophomore, etc. But that means that you are responsible for a residence hall. Because you're responsible for the floor, usually they offer you free housing, and it's a way to save if you really are interested in living on campus but can't necessarily afford that additional expense. Some free scholarship search websites. There are more than this, but these are what they're comfortable listing. They're free, don't have a fee attached. NJBEST is HESA's 529 plan product. You're not going to start one today. It's not necessarily going to benefit your student unless you have a younger child. They're popular now at baby showers. You don't bring Pampers. You bring an envelope that you're starting a 529 plan. So HESA does have a nice competitive one if you're interested in establishing one. And just some additional information at their site. They have their own webinars. If you have any questions, they might cover something that we didn't tonight. Some publication information. Just as a note, they are open later than most aid offices until 8. If you have a question, they may be able to assist. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. I think I stopped before 8. We have 2 minutes for maybe 1 or 2 questions before you have to move on. Do we have anything? Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry? Oh, go back to it? Sure.
I have a question. Aside from what you're submitting for your tax return in 2024, what other assets, like if the student has a 529 and it has a good amount of money in it, is that going to offset their eligibility for scholarships or loans?
on whose name it's listed in. So if the 529 plan is established in the parent name, it is the parent asset. If, say, grandma or aunt, uncle, you bought it at the baby shower, it's established in the student name, that would be the student asset. The way the FAFSA works overall, not necessarily this year, last year, overall, the formula changes, right? But overall, it looks at the entirety of the asset portfolio and takes a percentage of that and considers that percentage towards the calculated student aid index. So it doesn't necessarily say your 529 plan is worth $50,000 and that's a hit for you. It takes that percentage of the total asset and that works itself into the calculator. So how that works in combination with your income and other factors, number in the household, number in college, is all going to differ. Okay. Go, you want me to? I'm sorry. Oh, the deadlines? You want me to go back to that? Okay. Oh, this one? No. Oh, the end. I could just put my glasses on. Let me know when I'm there. Am I going the wrong way? That's all. Right here? No? No? Here? No. That's the end. Did the presentation will be posted?
Right.
I'm sorry.
This is not the end of Tammy, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
You don't mind. In the interest of time, so we are going to be hosting on October 28th at 6 p.m. Cozy opportunity virtually. We're going to have Tammy presenting how to fill out the FAFSA form. So it's literally going to be line by line how to advise you on filling out the FAFSA, read. So please, at the end of our presentation, our guidance presentation, we will put that up on the slides. So you will have an opportunity, I hope, to ask questions, further questions. And this presentation we will also share with all of you. Is there any advice you can give us on, let's say we do have lingering financial aid questions, what advice do you give to families in terms of getting appropriate professional assistance rather than emailing you, right? Who can they reach out to?
Well, I would say, as I visit schools, I do say I am at your disposal. So if you want to contact your school counselor and they contact me, that's perfectly fine. But as you start navigating into your schools, applying, getting your acceptances, you should definitely seek the financial aid office where you are, because even though we all do basically the same thing, there might be some caveats with our policies and procedures that differ that would just benefit you to get the answer from the school you'll be attending.
I appreciate you saying that we can seek you out for support. We are here for you as counselors too at Rutherford, but we don't pretend to be financial experts in this area, so we want to point you in the right direction. So you will often hear us say, reach out to the financial aid office. And students, especially as you've made determinations on where you're going to go, or right before you're making a determination, more importantly, we don't want to seem like we're not hopeful, but we don't want to advise a student wrong, we don't want to overstep. So that was great